So 13.3 has already been dropped in like quite a while. Actually, wait, what was the recent update again? 13.3 has been dropped for quite a while now, and I've also already made kind of an update video regarding 13.3. Granted, I did not cover literally everything because there are a couple of stuff that didn't come out. However, there is something that apparently people miss that was kind of just recently found out. I'm talking about Green Barrier. Now, Green Barrier is something that's already been figured out since 13.2 actually. 13.2 has already given us this Green Barrier sprite that nobody really figured out what it was supposed to be for. And when 13.3 dropped, apparently none of the data miners figured out that it was actually already used in a stage. It was used in these anniversary stage, or I think half anniversary, I'm not entirely sure. I think it is half anniversary, yeah. It's 11.5 anniversary for JP. They have these 5 stages which features this mysterious calamity enemy, and these stages has a special gimmick to them, which is this Green Barrier. Again, I'm kind of surprised that none of the data miners actually found this out when 13.3 dropped, because this is in every stage of the anniversary, but I guess they just don't bother checking the anniversary stages or something, I don't know. Anyways, at this point in time, some of you might already know what Green Barrier is. There's already a good amount of information out there and videos made about Green Barrier, but just to break it down, what Green Barrier is that it's essentially a true anti-cheese. It's a barrier that protects the base, and it is linked to the stage rather than the enemy itself. Essentially what it does is that you cannot damage the enemy base as long as the boss hasn't been defeated. So if the boss is on timer, then you can't even damage the base at all until you actually kill the boss. So as you can see here, you see the base is still at full HP even with Manic Lion hammering it down, and even after the boss has arrived, you see Air trying to destroy it there and it's still up. The base is still at full HP and the barrier is still right there. And now once the boss is dead, then you are finally able to actually destroy the base normally. So after the boss is dead, it immediately breaks and you can damage the base as normal again. If the boss is triggered through HP percentage, then it would basically not be able to be destroyed anyways, even if you try to like do the 1-frame cheese and all that stuff. Seven or Shichi has already made a very detailed video regarding on how the barriers work and like what can and what you can't do with it. The gist of it is that you can't do anything with the cheese, at least so far. But yeah, if you want to go more in depth on what the mechanic of the barrier is like, then I would highly recommend check Seven's videos because I wouldn't be covering it too much here. What I'm more interested in talking about is how this would impact the game and stage designs in the future, essentially. As for now, this gimmick has only been used for these anniversary stages, these 5 anniversary stages that I mentioned earlier. But also, like I said, this anti-cheese is not linked to the enemy. It is not linked to this mysterious calamity enemy, which by the way, I think is a pretty cool design, but it is linked to the stages itself. So not all stages that features mysterious calamity in the future will have Green Barrier unless Ponos decides it to, and any boss that will have Green Barrier in the future would not always have Green Barrier in every stages. So we still don't really know what the plan is for this Green Barrier. Again, this is currently only in the anniversary, but who knows what Ponos would do in the future with this. I'm honestly not sure how much this would actually matter in the future. I mean, there certainly are a lot of cheeses in the game, obviously. Oh god, of course the first result is no more cheese strat. But yeah, there are definitely some pretty relevant cheeses out there, but I think for the most part, if you are able to cheese some stages, generally you're still able to just do the stage normally anyways. There definitely are a couple of like pretty relevant cheese, but I think for the most part, most of the stages that can be cheesed are no longer stages that are so relevant to the point where you need to cheese them. And for the most part, it's really just if you are severely lacking in certain units. A lot of the times, cheeses are harder to do than the actual level. I think some rush cheese, I would say, are pretty more relevant. Like, I think the cheese where you would just try to destroy the base while the boss is already out is much rarer compared to just trying to destroy the base as soon as possible. That's probably the more relevant cheese, which is still getting prevented by the green barrier, of course. I think like cheeses are much more relevant in like other communities, and by other communities I mean like the Taiwanese or Korean or Japanese communities. I think they care about cheeses way more than English-speaking communities, I would say. Less of because it's more of a spectacle thing. It's not really like I would say like an actual strategy thing, and more like I think they have like a kind of a cheesing culture. They do a lot of like one-frame cheeses or like clip cheesing and stuff like that. They do it a lot there. Nobody really does that on English-speaking community. I mean, sometimes, but I think it's very rare compared to other communities. So I think other communities are more impacted by this because they're like, well, this is a cool thing that we do. Like, what now? But I mean, obviously, it's not going to be used in every stages because in 13.3, like I said, when 13.3 dropped, the only stages that has green barrier is the half anniversary stages. All of the other 13.3 stages that drops, whichever they are, I'm pretty sure there's not that much aside from just like one ZL, and I guess there's the Giga Honey 1-1, but like they only put it on specifically the 11th anniversary stages, so I think it's safe to assume that they're probably not going to be using it that much, but it definitely would still, you know, impact EN community in a way. I think one of the biggest, or at least some of the biggest changes that I would say this could affect in general is that, oh my goodness, they don't actually need to put anti-cheeses on a stage. It is pretty common for Ponos to put anti-cheese on a stage. When you hit the base down to a certain percentage, some extra enemies will spawn. Like here in floor 40, if you hit the base, a bunch of Mr. Angels will spawn. The boss is on timer, of course, but Ponos had to make like an extra just in case if someone decides to cheese and put a bunch of Mr. Angels on the base. This is very annoying, especially in the case of like floor 40, where Eulala is a boss that gets knocked back a lot. It is not terribly uncommon for you to maybe accidentally hit the base a little bit too early or a little bit too much because you push Eulala back too much, and that could potentially be really bad because look at the amount of Mr. Angels here. If you're bringing a more glass cannon lineup, this could kill you, and by this could kill you, I mean this has actually killed Wufa before. Look at this description. I did actually kill Eulala yesterday without Ubers, however I lost to the Mr. Angel spam that's in the base because Bahamut was still on cooldown and I didn't have throwaway cat. Just imagine this, right? You finally beating a stage. Like, this was a very infamous stage when it came out because we didn't have Glass Cat on English version. That's why Wufa specifically mentioned as JP. But his lineup was so glass cannon that it can't even beat the anti-cheese, which is like very annoying, right? And this all is just a way for Ponos to prevent their players from, you know, beating the stage in a cheesy way. And so this could accidentally add a layer of complexity to the stage that could have been much simpler, or just makes the stage much more annoying. And it's even worse that on floor 40's release, Eulala accidentally had a wrong width, and it's actually very easy to accidentally clip enemies, clip your cat units through Eulala. Aside from anti-cheese, I believe Ponos would also sometimes design stages in mind to make the cleanup harder. Like, this is one of the most annoying cleanup in a stage ever, and I'm pretty sure it's partially because they don't want the players to accidentally cheese the stage. Like, look at that, just having a big stack and then suddenly just losing it all because of freaking search base because they put like 10 million HP on the base. That wouldn't have happened if they have a green barrier on. Granted, this probably would be a little bit harder to do because there's multiple bosses here, but still, just even having to link one of the bosses for the green barrier would have probably made this cleanup much simpler because they don't need to put 12 million HP on the base for preventing anti-cheese. And I think that would make for a better stage design. But also, this is Ponos. We don't really know what they're gonna do with this. There might be a chance that they might not do anything with this at all. They might just have this as a one-off for half anniversary and that's it. Remember the time when Ponos decided to have a new mechanic where they would have enemies that triggers depending on how much cat units have died. So certain enemies would only spawn when certain cat units have died. And then they use it as a gimmick for like one stage. And it's a stage with 100% Borophim. And then they ended up never using that gimmick ever again. Yeah, Pono sometimes just kind of do that. So I wouldn't be surprised if this is also a one-off thing. Now, I actually read some comments from Seven's video to see what JP commenters would think about this. I think for the most part, people are fine with it. They are pretty aware that like this could make like anti-cheese better, or like, you know, some cheeses are kind of basically counted as like an unexpected exploit. So I think it's like fine for Ponos to kind of try to make a countermeasure for that. But they would also are pretty concerned to, you know, hopefully they don't put this on like farming stages. Matatabi here is cat fruit. So they say like, hopefully this doesn't occur for like XP stages or cat fruit stages, you know, stages that you want to rush and just clear fast. But they're also like, well, I guess it's fine if it's like, you know, special advent bosses and whatnot. One comment that I think was pretty interesting, one actually says this would be a good countermeasure when a cat gains warp ability, which I thought was actually kind of interesting. That is actually a pretty interesting point. I guess if cats have warp abilities in the future, that could like increase the possibility of crazy cheese stuff. And I guess I kind of understand, yeah, maybe this could be a countermeasure for warp. Also, maybe not really, because I think if you really want to make this like a countermeasure for warp, then you might want to put this on older stages. And I don't think they would do that. I don't think they would change older stages to now have barriers. I don't think they would bother doing that, or at least they wouldn't do it to a lot of extent. I wouldn't put it past them that they might do it on very specific stages, but I think for the most part, they wouldn't really want to change existing stages. I think that would just be too much trouble for what it's worth. But this is Ponos. We're just gonna have to wait and see on what they decide to do with this. Anyways, that's about all. What do you guys think about the green barriers? You think I missed some points that could be interesting about this? Let me know in the comments. And yeah, that's all. Catch you later. Bye.